Happy Tuesday. I'm Dave DeLuca, and we are about to go over integrated compliance, the synergy between GXP and other regulatory requirements. So I know what's integrated compliance, right? We're going to get into it. It's a new topic for the industry, but I think it's an important one. So I'm joined here today by Lakshmi and Ken, who will introduce themselves shortly. So maybe Ken, you want to start off and say hi to the people?
Sure. Hi. I think this is a new topic. It's kind of one of these things where, CSA is old news, and this is forward thinking where you should be looking. And compliance group has a long history of being on the forefront. So I'm kind of excited to be here and just chiming in on their visionary message.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, and Ken runs the IT quality and compliance group at Gilead. So he lives some of this stuff, these pain points from a day-to-day. So I think that he'll have a great perspective on what he's been doing, to try to move towards this vision. And then Lakshmi, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. This is Lakshmi Chitrapu. I work as a senior manager here at Compliance Group. I work with Dave DeLuca. We do have not just amazing team, even amazing projects to make sure that, we are helping our customers with whatever friction points they have and, make progress and give them sufficient improvements in respective projects. I'm excited for this session. Thank you.
Yeah, Lakshmi, thanks. And so I'm Dave. I head up the strategic consulting group here at Compliance Group. We're focused on all the business process consulting and technology projects that we're involved in with the industry. My background is in manufacturing, R&D, and IT for medical device and pharmaceutical companies. So I've worn a lot of different hats. But yeah, I think that this is going to be a great session today, and I hope you all have some takeaways and some value here. So to start off, we're going to hopefully give an overview to what our idea of integrated compliance is, right? So we'll start there. Then we'll get into the why. Why integrated compliance? What are the issues that we're currently seeing, that we're all kind of, seeing that there's opportunities for improvement, and how activating integrated compliance or heading towards the direction of integrated compliance can help solve some of those. Then we're going to get into how we implement integrated compliance. So we have some case studies, some different ways of implementing connection between GXP and non-GXP regulations. So we'll go over those. And then finally, what's in it for me? Everybody wants to know what's in it for them. So we'll summarize everything. We'll do a Q&A session. Hopefully we'll have time to get into all any specifics or any ideas you guys have on this topic. So please, this is, enter your questions and comments into the chat, and we'll make sure we try to address all of them at the end of this. But to start, we have a fun little interactive activity here. So we have a QR code. These things got very popular in COVID. I haven't seen a real menu, I think, in most of the places I go to now. But if you guys could take out your phones and scan this QR code, we have a few questions for you to kind of gauge, where the audience is at, right? It's always important to know the audience. And I think I have an idea of where we're all at, but I think it would be valuable if you guys could take a minute or so and answer these questions. And so I'll leave this up for a second so everybody is good and can scan their phones with that. And really, there's two questions that we want to get into here. One is, have you worked with GXP and non-GXP computerized systems before? Have you worked with just GXP? Have you been more in the financial kind of non-quality regulated space? Or have you had experience with both? So that'll be the first question that you'll answer. And then the second question you'll answer is, where are you with your computer system validation processes, or, process validation, equipment validation, et cetera? Are you on paper still? Are you taking a hybrid approach, maybe using DocuSign to execute some of the test cases, things like that? Or are you truly paperless, using an ALM tool or similar tool? So I'll go back to the QR code just so everybody has a chance to scan it if they didn't. And then we'll wait maybe a minute or so. And then we'll read the results. All right, so I don't have my chat open, so I don't know, Lakshmi, if the results have been entered into the chat yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so we'll give it another few seconds or so. All right, I've given it a couple minutes here, so hopefully we can get some of the results. If not, we can move on and then
Yes.
and pause when they come up.
Let's do that, I think.
Okay, sounds good. The show must go on, so we'll get those results to you hopefully in the next couple slides here. All right, so first off, I wanted to kind of take a step back, right, and look at the world map and what are some of the global regulations that we deal with, right? On a day-to-day IT quality lifestyle that we have, we're pretty well versed in the FDA regs around system validation, right? 21 CFR 210, 211, 820.70I, Part 11, even Annex 11. We got these regs memorized. But on a global scale, there's a lot more to compliance than just validation. Not only do we have other countries and regions that have their own regulatory bodies and unique standards and processes, you know, Health Canada, EMA, MHRA, PDMA, et cetera, but there are many, many non-quality regulations out there that we need to comply with. So whether it's the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, Sarbanes-Oxley Act, SOX, and many others, they impact our computerized systems, and we don't often have a holistic way of incorporating them into our compliance activities. So, Q integrated compliance. Again, this is a new concept, and I don't think a lot of people have heard of it, so I'll try to break down the thesis of what this is. So first off, when people think integration, the first place they'll go is system integrations and data flow, right? For integrated compliance, we think that having the lens of a digital thread will enable you to gain greater efficacy, greater efficiency, all the good stuff within your value stream. Historically, we've brought systems to production in a manner that's been more siloed, right? But as digital transformation, Industry 4.0 is moving full steam ahead, we are truly at a competitive disadvantage if we're not thinking about being data-driven and interconnected. So, IT systems plus SDLC processes. So the next level up is focusing on our SDLC. As we know, computer software assurance, CSA, is important to ensure intended use and business needs are met for systems. But organizations struggle to understand best practices around both quality and non-quality regulated systems, whether it's quality, GXP, financial, data privacy and security, et cetera. Controls need to be in place to ensure that they're appropriately traceable, appropriately documented, and that compliance and risk management needs are met. In the software development, this means integrating GXP and non-GXP requirement into every phase of the SDLC, from planning and design all the way through deployment and maintenance. Additionally, it's important to have processes defined for agile development and CI/CD within your SDLC, right? These things are going to help us be more flexible and more scalable for our IT projects. Finally, we're focused on compliance governance, right? A unified framework such as a global GRC. It provides a holistic view of compliance across the organization, consolidating governance, risk management, and assurance activities under one umbrella. This will enable us to understand how different compliance requirements intersect and impact each other and get more comprehensive and effective strategies to dealing with our day-to-day compliance activities. So all of this, IT systems plus SDLC plus compliance governance, we're saying equals quality excellence. And it's big Q quality, right? It's quality, supplier quality, IT quality, manufacturing quality, R&D quality across the board, right? We want to strive for the kind of the gold standard, right? We may never get there, but every day that we take a step forward and follow that path, we'll be better off. So this is my little view of how IT compliance has evolved over the years, right? Just like the Model T, the CSV old school V model was once cutting edge, just as Henry Ford spared some horses, right, from doing work, and we got to use combustible engines. CSV gave the IT teams tools to ensure software requirements were met and bugs were caught before go live. However, over the coming years, right, CSV became synonymous with hundreds of pages of test scripts and over compliance, costing a lot of money, a lot of time, and unnecessary work. So then, more recently, we started to develop leaner validation processes and systems. CSA came on the scene and say, hey, everything's not high risk. We can test commensurate with risk, right? We can leverage our vendors. We can do things like unscripted testing, all that good stuff. So our regulators even endorsed it. And during this period, the industry started to develop software to take those manual paper-based processes and digitize them, right? Save some trees, do some less non-value added work. Everybody's happy, right? Well, there's two things that are being missed in our current paradigm that's stopping us from leveling up. First off is that IT compliance teams are really only focused on quality regulations during implementation, right? We talked about this a little bit. They're designing their systems and processes from the lens of, they're not designing them from the lens of non-quality regulations, right? Whether it's the financial, the privacy, or the security controls. Another thing is that, we're really in the stage where we're transitioning from digitization to digitalization, right? We're not just looking at taking paper and putting in electronic form and doing validation that way. We really want to have data-centric digital threads. With the thesis of, if there's more visibility, the more visibility you have to your data, the more velocity you will have when doing validation, when managing changes, et cetera. With these things, with both the digitalization impact and the integrated compliance, we're saying that, hey, we can be the equivalent of the DeLorean. We might not be there today, but it's a path that we want to go. So hopefully, I don't know if we have the polling results, but hopefully we are here, right? Mostly as a group. We're more on the CSA. We're starting to use digital tools, but we're walking the path of trying to be more integrated and more holistic.
I think, Dave, one of the key points here is, we've historically had quality by design, then security adopted, security by design, privacy is adopted. It's right now the buzzwords, privacy by design. So to the whole point of where you're going, it's everything by design, and it's taking that holistic view that is really going to take us forward, because there's a lot of overlap. If you're going to design, you cannot have privacy without security. So it's one of these interesting things. It's where we're going. So
yeah, thanks, Ken. And Lakshmi, you were gonna say something?
We do have the results from the poll. So for the first question, where we asked about how many people have worked with GXP and non-GXP computerized systems, the majority answered both.
Oh, that's good.
The second question, where are you with your validation processes? Majority have answered hybrid.
Hybrid. Okay. So yeah, so exactly where we kind of pinpointed us, like in between the Ferrari looking car and the Prius here, that's kind of where we're collectively at as a group, which is great, right? Because that means we've made a lot of strides over the last 5-10 years with CSA and with digitization. But we know what's coming, right? And we need to, again, focus on pulling as many levers as we can to kind of adopt these transformative tools and business processes. So I'm a little bit of a nerd. I mean, people who know me know that, but I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the Marvel movies, but in one of the newer series, Loki, we were introduced to the idea of multiverses for our superheroes, right? And in the show, there's a group, they're known as the TVA, the Time Variance Authority, and they're trying to stop all the different universes from branching out, right? And I think that this one is a perfect analogy for what we're trying to do with integrated compliance. See, in our current SDLC implementation practices, we have all these parallel compliance activities kind of going on, right? We have validation activities, we have data security, privacy, we have SOX audits, SOX compliance, we have cybersecurity needs. And they all might be happening in silos, right? I'm not saying that every single time they're happening in silos, but it's not holistic, right? So this multiverse of compliance activities can only be helped by, you guessed it, integrated compliance, a centralized framework to GRC. And in the show, they would say that they would call this the sacred timeline. So what we're trying to do is stay as close to that sacred timeline as possible with integrated compliance here. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lakshmi to talk a little bit about some of the current friction points in our model.
Sure. So this particular section is going to address the common challenges which organizations face in managing multiple compliance requirements, right? Again, these are at a high level what we have listed, 6 of them. But if you are facing currently some more friction points, feel free to jot down in the chat and ask questions if you have, right? The first one where it says constrained resources, right? Multiple workflows doing parallel compliance activities, right? Like each department or team may have its own set of compliance requirements, but there are duplicate efforts which often lead to inefficiencies and resource drain. And every team also must feel the accountability within the team for compliance, right? It's not like a particular step or a stage where you start talking about compliance. It should be right from the design phase, right from your planning phase, right? Everything has to move to the left, to Ken's point where he was saying privacy by design, security by design, right? That comes into picture. Another constraint, what we have noticed is GRC is usually the governance, risk, and compliance teams are usually we have a perception that they are roadblockers rather than assuming that they are the strategic partners in achieving the integrated compliance, right? So the compliance activities are viewed as hindrance, again, to not just progress, even for innovation and agility, right? The second friction point currently companies encounter is complexity, right? Organizations are often overwhelmed, right? Because of the sheer volume of requirements which they have to adhere to, making it very challenging to maintain compliance. And it also brings them down to not use the right guidance and tools. They also do not have clear understanding of which requirements pose the greatest risk. That's another thing, right? And many organizations may allocate resources, but those are inefficient, bringing out inefficiencies and also leading to sometimes compliance breaches, regulatory scrutiny, right? So lack of necessary infrastructure, processes, and technologies will also lead to the data, which is again not compliant, and this deficiency will hamper ability to demonstrate compliance, but also, exposes them to the risk of data breaches, regulatory fines, and reputational damage. The next one, friction point, is cultural resistance. So the resistance usually stems from various factors, which can include fear of change, uncertainty about the new technologies, and also they have a lot of concerns that the existing workflows are disrupted, right? Sometimes there is no involvement or also support from leadership. So without the strong advocacy from senior management, the effort to adopt, again, new technologies and also even methodologies associated with SDLC projects will face a lot of roadblocks. Another friction point is cumbersome and inconsistent procedures. As you all are aware that we usually end up drafting a procedure either to address a particular existing issue or as part of a remediation project, where we encounter a particular issue, right? So over the time, the documents organically grow in the landscape. Sometimes they don't have a parent, which is either a standard or a policy, and people don't understand which one to follow, where to enter and where to exit. So one size fits all approach to compliance sometimes doesn't work. So lack of integration, that's the next one, where making sure that, that silos approach, what Dave was mentioning earlier, which again leads to inconsistencies, duplications, and also leaves gaps in compliance coverage, is what we have frequently noticed are happening in current practices. Again, from the visual perspective, you can imagine, because of this lack of integration, how different branches of processes and even data are populated. The last one is the compliance redundancy. So again, redundant CAPAs for identical issues and also for identical agendas. There are different audits, internal audits, which occur. Again, they create a lot of superfluous work. Quality and compliance sometimes are not interconnected, and that's where this particular session we want to introduce and make you understand how you can tackle each of these friction points and bring about the integrated compliance together.
Yeah, so like Lakshmi said, definitely feel free to write in the chat and think about what are, do these things resonate with you? Is there another kind of friction point that you're seeing as an opportunity for improvement to go towards integrated compliance? I mean, for me, the cumbersome and inconsistent procedures is something that drives me nuts. Especially that whole one size fits all approach to compliance, right? Whether it's GXP or non-GXP, whether it's SaaS, whether it's a hosted solution, whether it's on-premise solution, we're trying to pigeonhole, everything into that same group. I think of that video of the different blocks, right? And the girl saying, okay, the square goes into here, right? It goes into the square hole. And then, they end up keep throwing it through that circle hole, right? Instead of putting the different shapes into the different things. And so I think about, hey, we don't need to do software testing the quality way for every single type of system or every single requirement, right? It's a non-GXP requirement, for example. Maybe you don't have to deal with deviations and validation defects the same exact way as you would with a GXP quality type of system testing, right? And that's kind of what we want to unlock through this is figure out, with your organization based on, your experience and what types of systems you have and the technology landscape you have, what is the best approach for you?
I think the other one though that comes up is it's complex because everything is done in a silo by business function. And so getting that unity, it's not so tricky. It is an element of change management and really acknowledging the value of collaboration. So.
Yeah, good point, Ken. I agree.
So this particular slide, we want to mention about what are the different success factors for integrated compliance, right? We have gone through the evolution slide where Dave has shown from how we can move from a paper-based to digitalization and, ultimately to the digital transformation, right? Critical thinking is the initial factor, like which you can consider for the computerized systems. Again, within the context of the business process, it supports and also combination of people, process, and technology, right? Having that robust knowledge of what the intended use and having the clarity is very important. Understanding where the risks are in terms of patient safety, product quality, data integrity, and also to the business, because now we are merging both GXP and non-GXP together. And applying that critical thinking will help you out to go ahead and choose a particular methodology and approach that is easy and that doesn't amount to a lot of documentation in place, but which caters to the purpose of what the implementation is and also is a sustainable process. So analyzing the risk at the system level and the requirement level is something where critical thinking comes into picture. Again, differentiating those validation versus assurance based on the type of risk. If it's a low risk, how you can leverage even unscripted testing, what assurance activities that have been done by some of the development teams can be leveraged is very helpful, and applying that critical thinking is important. The next success factor for integrated compliance is adopting agile software development, right? In a traditional approach, usually business process owners, quality groups are involved at a detailed level of key stages, like either they approve the entire URS or they review all the acceptance test results, right? Whereas with Agile, it is more a continuous cycle of involvement against more of your manageable items of delivery through sprints. So having that mindset of discovery, having that mindset of working software rather than just delivering, documentation, comprehensive documentation, also having the mindset of customer collaboration over contract negotiation and responding to a change over following a plan is very important for us to get that step closer to the integration. Nowadays, the scenario is with regulated companies, there is increased utilization of information system services, like companies to provide your either infrastructure, software, or some data services. So regulated companies must establish a risk-based assessment and also governance strategy to ensure that the service providers are adhering to IT quality and also information security controls, right? So that it ensures that services and solutions are right fit for the intended use and data integrity is maintained. So having a robust third-party risk and supplier management is critical. I've seen a lot of companies where risk management and supplier management is only specific to your procurement process. Bless you. So your procurement process where required IT or technology side quality functions are not part of it, and you're just rolling out and accepting vendors, but where you have to make sure that you have this robust process. Again, utilizing tools instead of documents. This is the biggest benefit, and it speeds up your updates the way the supplier is providing, and there is always acceptance of what it is there versus just producing documentation to the updates and providing, going ahead and approving those. For all of these to be successfully implemented, not just for even integrated, even as you all might have witnessed for CSA implementation, also organizational change management comes into picture, where that adoption, where that change mindset can be brought into the people's minds, and all the departments can successfully collaborate. To Ken's point earlier, collaboration is a very big important thing.
Just on this slide though, to reiterate the critical thinking, I mean, it applies more than what's there. It's like critical thinking when you're looking at your business practices and processes. If we look at our journey at CSA, we treat the GXP systems and the non-GXP systems that and our ideal implementation of CSA is to leverage the testing results from the non-GXP test cycle. So what do? We test software the way it should be tested, and then the GXP cycle, we review that. So that resonates, but that last box is actually the more interesting area. So I think I didn't do the proper introduction. I head up quality and compliance. So I have privacy, I have quality assurance, quality engineering. Quality engineering covers software testing, validation, and infra-qual. So when you're kind of looking at there, and one of the things I also assumed in the QA unit is auditing of our suppliers, which then guides into our validation efforts. But you look at that third-party risk, I think that's something that people really, I mean, if you're saying the majority, I think it was like 30 people said that they do both GXP and non-GXP. It's like it's approximately 80% of boards consider cyber risks to be business risks, right? And then you start putting it into context. You look at Merck through a third party, that the damages from that was $1 billion. The United Health is, I believe it's at like 900 million, and it's expected to go over $1 billion. And then you look at it, there's a study done that there's, I think the N was around 500, and it was saying that the cost for a breach was, I believe, 4 million. And if you were in the healthcare life sciences, the average breach was $11 million per event. So these are quite significant. And this is an area where if we're already looking at stuff, we can expand and leverage the synergies and then have a holistic view to minimize our risk. So just some food for thought.
Yeah, Ken, I mean, that's a big deal, right? And I agree with that third party and supplier management. What I found most of our customers struggling with is, okay, they're adopting CSA in their day-to-day lifestyles, right? They're doing unscripted testing. They're looking at requirements at the function level, right? They're, dealing with, they don't have to deal with all the paperwork series as well. All right, so we talked about this multiverse approach a little bit ago, but here's an example of our favorite functions here. We got quality, finance, IT, marketing, and they're all managing different needs independently, right? They're working on GXP stuff, some are working on SOC stuff, some are working on third-party risk stuff, etc. Right? This decentralized framework leads to a lot of overlapping, as Ken said, redundancies, as Lakshmi said, and inconsistent compliance activities as I said. So these are three big things and symptoms of having this type of framework. And what we want to move to, again, from the integrated compliance standpoint, is a centralized framework. We want to integrate the functions and the governance and the process and tackle all of these needs together, or as best we can, right? There's never going to be a perfect world where this happens, but there's definitely opportunity to grow and be stronger in this area in a streamlined and focused manner.
So one thing to add here, though, is like, you know, to emphasize, so I won't shamelessly plug, but I like Dr. Soper. I've met him before, so I recommend going to that talk. But then just looking at this, the earlier slide, Lakshmi was talking about the OCM component. This is, you know, a visionary. This is where we should be heading. The value is there. So if you look at just, again, studies, when you have the collaborative approach of 43 in the third-party risk, and you can clearly see that's an area of interest for me right now. But if you look at the third-party risk area, it's you're 43% more likely to reduce your risk when you're doing it with the collaborative, cross-functional approach before there's material impact of that risk. So it is something for that collaborative view. And then if you're actually looking in the third-party risk space, the biggest two levers that you have where there's correlation is one is being aware of the changing scope, right? And that requires a cross-functional, and then changing risk appetite, which again is a cross-functional in the third-party space where you're looking at, say, procurement, legal, your IT functions, your traditional privacy function, architecture as well. So when they all work together, there's clear reduction in risk and effort as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's what we want to try to enable you guys and empower you guys to start working on.
So on this slide, we are going to compare the approaches of how a current process and an integrated process looks like to, again, you know, what Ken was mentioning, right? It's gonna save a lot of time eventually, but before that, you know, you're gonna have reduce the complexity, and also you have reduced a lot of risk. The first thing is assessment, right? Current practices, you have assessment where separate functions are determining in separate stages of SDLC implementations, right? And GXP and other, which is either related to a financial reporting impact or a privacy impact. If I go specifically to a business process owner or a system owner and ask, do you have an assessment? They were like, we don't know who did that, when they did it, where it is, right? So as part of integrated approach, a targeted unified assessment, which again maps to your regulatory requirements, which delivers, you know, what the impact is based out of that. As soon as you respond to that assessment, it will spit out what different controls you have to now roll out as part of your SDLC implementation. So having that assessment right at the onboarding of your computerized system is very important, and making sure that, you know, you have the right controls in place. Risk. In a current practices, each impact area, we assess the risk from a different perspective. In an integrated approach, you know, everything is single, unified approach. We make sure we are not just considering the patient, product, and data integrity impact. We also are considering the requirements for data security and data privacy, and making sure that, you know, they're all embedded together. From a testing perspective, again, this also resonates with the CSA principles and implementation, right? Like current practices, all of the testing, both for GXP and non-GXP, are occurring in silos, not understanding where the requirements are overlapping, right? Once we have a common framework, it's going to spit out same set of controls that are to be implemented, which will cater to both GXP and non-GXP regulations. The next one is, again, the compliance. Again, this is from a current perspective, we have current practice allows only for different subject areas to approach requirements separately, again, leading to overlap and gap. With integrated, it's the same point where you will be able to see where the overlap is, where some of the gaps are, and based on that, you can plan the next steps. From a savings perspective, integrated definitely has, you know, a lot of efficient processes, and you can realize how much you can save once you go into an integrated framework.
Yeah, so hopefully everybody, as we've kind of gone through some of these slides, sees the opportunity there, right? Sees the opportunity to be more integrated in our approaches. I think the first step is assessing the current landscape, right? Where are your opportunities to be more integrated? Certainly, what Lakshmi was saying about having an initial controls assessment that covers the full gamut of GXP and non-GXP regulations, so you understand and you have an input and a framing to, okay, what do I need to do for this system, right? Doing it by design, to Ken's point, not waiting till go live and then, trying to clean up the mess and figure out, okay, how do I do these things? How do I be compliant with this, et cetera. From a risk and testing perspective, yeah, there's definitely different tracks to a GXP system versus a non-GXP system. And those, I think, from a quality documentation standpoint, can be handled differently, right? Because at the end of the day, the goal is to test and make sure that your requirements are met and your system's in a state of control and you're minimizing the risk. But it doesn't mean that you need to handle everything the same exact way. And then ultimately, right, I think every win, every little piece that you can take from integrated compliance will be a savings to the business. So I think that the value is there, and it's just a matter of kind of starting that journey. Okay, so like I said, there's a lot of overlap here. And so we did an analysis for a client last year that looked at their GXP, their security and privacy and SOX controls. And what we found were that there were a ton of the same type of requirements across the three areas, standards in their regs. So this led us to understand an important mantra, and who doesn't love a good mantra, right? Assess once, test once, satisfy many. This is a good thing to maybe say as a little blurb for integrated compliance, right? Is that essentially what we were able to do through the assessment was consolidate our test assurance needs. And we found that more than half of the controls actually in these three areas for this company were overlapping. And to me, that's a pretty staggering number. And then, over here, we have the list of different standards and frameworks that we looked at, the different regulations that we derived things from. So again, this is just an example. It's not going to be the same for everybody, but this is what we found from our end for that particular client project.
So this particular slide, we wanted to give you that example, like how Dave was mentioning where the overlap is, and also when I was comparing the current and the integrated approach. This is a quick table which shows that, how quality and information security, how they can fit together, right? And how they must be handled accordingly. When computer systems are validated for their intended use, it is not just done as quality in mind, right? We also have to consider the IT and, our information security services. They are sufficiently implemented, and also they're integrated with what, the company is going for. Again, it is beneficial to look at where the standards and regulations in the quality and security domains can complement each other, where gaps exist is also important. So this table, as Dave is, rolling it out, it shows that how good engineering practices from other standards outside the, pharmaceutical industry are relevant to our operations, right? The NIST model of security and privacy controls describes these functions, right? On the left, the functions are described where it is you need to identify, protect, data, respond, and recover, right? And these are the different categories of how cybersecurity activities and NIST explain in their framework. But on the right, you see the different now guidances or standards which are to be implemented, right? Just if we take the example of identify, there is asset management, right? And I know everybody are aware on this call, like asset management, you have to make sure that the data, the personal, even devices, systems, all the facilities that are used for achieving a particular business process are identified and managed consistently, again, giving importance to what the organizational risk strategies and also what the business objectives are, right? If you compare there in the center, I have listed out the examples of the regulations, like from a FDA 21 CFR part the 211 and also Annex 11, and how ISO 27001, they both speak to the same asset management, and that's where the overlap comes into picture, right? And certainly there are other functions and standards which are also explained on the right, apart from the asset management, which caters to identification. If we take the next one, which is the protection, again, access control is a major thing. 21 CFR 211, 21 CFR Part 11, even Annex 11, and also the ISO 27001. They have specific section. I even remember in ISO 27001, it is Annex Appendix 9, which speaks to access control. So that's how we need to just make sure that we understand where the overlap is and where we can cater the rest of the activities so that that collaboration and integration is there to avoid redundancies and inefficiencies. Likewise, the rest of the sections where you have to detect, again, security, where continuous monitoring is required for cybersecurity events, which to Ken's point is taking precedence over all of the major risk nowadays, and detection, how soon you have procedures and how you are able to maintain and also test in a timely way for these anomalous events is also part of the detection process, which is both again part of our 21 CFR Part 11 and also ISO 27001. Responding, how you respond for a plan based out of your detection of certain cybersecurity events. How do you do analysis and have mitigations in place for these is part of response. And recovering is also important, right? Once we have these procedures in place, how timely you can restore your systems, have your assets not affected by most of the cybersecurity events. A lot of collaboration is there when we compare the regulations, especially for, from a regulatory requirements, from a GXP perspective, and also from an information security standards perspective. So these, in understanding these and incorporating